our World Teachers' Day is a great celebration of that, but I would be asking people to be thinking, where else can you be doing that? Really, what we want to do at aitsl is create a culture where teachers know that they are respected and trusted and valued by the Australian community.
You're listening to Around the School Table, hosted by me, Steve Davis, and proudly powered by Xuno Suite. We'll be bringing together the many voices shaping primary and secondary education across Australia, from principals and teachers to education thought leaders and system innovators. Whether you're in the classroom, the staff room, or the boardroom, this is your podcast to be informed, inspired, and connected. Today on Around the School Table, we're joined by Tim Bullard, CEO of the Australian Institute of Teaching and School Leadership, the national body amplifying the voice of teachers across Australia. With more than 500,000 registered teachers in the country, the Institute's Teacher Workforce Survey captures what I would call the pulse of the profession. It offers deep insights into well-being, retention, and the evolving landscape of education. And in this chat we're about to have, Tim will be sharing what the latest data reveals about life in Australian schools, how systems can better support teachers through every stage of their careers, and why meaningful recognition must extend beyond World Teachers' Day. So if you're an educator and you're passionate about the future of teaching, I think this discussion is going to be timely and inspiring. Tim, welcome to Around the School Table.
Oh, thanks so much, Steve. It's great to be here.
Before we get started, let's just break down the role of AITSL, which is pronounced aitsl. It stands for the Australian Institute of Teaching and School Leadership, and you're often quoted as saying that it's the voice of teachers. Is that voice driven by the Australian Teacher Workforce Survey?
Well, so I think it's fair to say that it has been amplified by the Australian Teacher Workforce Survey. We've been around since 2010, and in the 15 years that aitsl has existed, we've really ensured that we are listening closely to the profession, understanding the issues and opportunities that they face, and looking at ways that we can communicate those to national decision makers, particularly ministers for education. With the Australian Teacher Workforce data, though, we've got that voice firsthand. So we can actually take what teachers and school leaders are telling us, provide insights, and then provide that to ministers for those really important decisions.
I have taken a glance through the most recent survey results, and it listed, 553,032 registered teachers. The survey typically collects input from about 10% of those teachers. What are some of the key findings most recently?
So there are a number of findings which came out in some recent releases, which you can find on our website. One of the first of those is that we've now got 2/3 or 66% of the teaching workforce bringing more than a decade of classroom experience, which I think is really interesting. People often think that there's a lot of early career teachers and a lot of churn, but you can see that there's a lot of maturity in that workforce. Likewise, we've seen an uptick in the experience of school principals. So those with 10 to 29 years of experience now sit around 63%. And that's a move from the last survey that we did of something like 5 or 6% there. So again, we're getting people who are more experienced leading our schools. This is really important because it assists us to know the kinds of supports that more experienced teachers are going to need to be able to do their best for children and young people in learning environments.
See, based on that, you wouldn't be surprised by the fact that I've just been working recently with a school in Adelaide where they had a number of teachers who'd been at the school for 20 years. And in fact, a couple of them had put their children back through that same school. It surprised me, but I'm guessing you're seeing that sort of thing in the data.
And I think that's what is amazing about the data, because it shows firsthand insights about the reality of what's happening on the ground. And often it's easy to operate in a world of anecdotes or the last person you spoke to. So that's why we really cherish the kind of data that we're getting through this survey.
You've actually pointed out teaching's a deeply individual experience. I mean, schools differ, demographics differ, career journeys differ. So what are some more things that sort of stood out the most about the range of teacher voices and perspectives in that last survey?
It's such a good question, Steve. I think my own personal view was, well, it is the teaching profession. And we often talk in that global generality of this homogenous mass of individuals who are involved in the endeavour of teaching. And in the latest workforce data, you can see that people's individual experience, both the opportunities, the joy, the barriers, the things that are concerning them, are very, very different depending on their context. So through the data, we can look at regional and remote schools versus urban schools. We can look at teachers who are older versus teachers that are in early career. And we can look at different demographics around the socioeconomic status of the communities that they're working in. Each of those attributes is actually leading to different answers to the questions that we're asking. And I find that fascinating. I think what this gives us an opportunity to do is to assist decision makers to make more nuanced decisions about different cohorts of teachers, rather than say, here is the answer for this amorphous profession.
And what a diverse profession it is too, because I have just maintained a friendship with my Year 12 drama teacher as an adult, all above board, and it's been a wonderful, enriching part for my life, and I think hers. We've enjoyed watching each other, and that's not something you get in many other careers, is it? This is this depth, this texture of this career. This is why it's so, I think, one of the most important callings that anyone could have.
What we like to say at aitsl is teaching is a human endeavour. And what we mean by that is it is knowing learners and how they learn, and it's making a human connection to individuals. But it also is underpinned by what we see in the teaching profession itself, which is an absolute commitment to the growth of individual children and young people every day. And whilst there are other caring professions or other professions in human services, that you very rarely sort of get that overarching commitment to all aspects of a learner.
Increasingly, not just in teaching, but the single career is a thing of the past for many people. Teachers, no different. Your surveys, which I think started in about 2018, show that many registered teachers would actually consider returning if the right role were available. So that makes me think, how can education systems and governments make it easier for teachers to step away and then later re-enter the profession and bring that extra life experience with them?
We often hear about this attrition of teaching, and what we know actually is that people leaving the profession of teaching is less than people leaving other professions. So that's the starting point. But what we also know is what you've indicated, that a lot of those people, once they've left and tried different things or had children or families or been at different life stages, are very willing to come back. It really gives us some interesting data to think about, because we know that there are workforce challenges. We've effectively got a group of people who are enthusiastic about returning, but there are quite a few unnecessary barriers at the moment. If I just indicate a couple of things that we've highlighted, there's not always really good flexible re-entry pathways. So what about if I only want to come back part-time? How does that work? People often feel that the world's moved on, teaching and education, and how do I upskill or refresh my skills? How am I going to adjust to changes in the profession since I left? And also, too, sometimes people feel that maybe that transition's not going to be as smooth as they'd want it to be. So these things at the moment are sitting there as maybe reasons not to. And at aitsl, we're really interested in what would need to happen so that they disappear and people are enthusiastic about getting back into the classroom.
Is it too early to describe what some of those things might look like? Because part of my mind goes to micro-credentials, another part perhaps shadowing or being within an environment through a phase. Is it too early to ask that question?
Well, I think we can identify a number of sort of things to be examined further. One is what kind of professional learning or support do you need to get back into the classroom? I think you flagged another one, which is how do we not necessarily rebuild, but ensure that we're supporting your confidence in being in a contemporary learning environment. I think we can look at re-registration. So if you've been out for a period of time and your registration's lapsed, what's your pathway to re-registering as a teacher? Also, too, I think, what does it actually look like in terms of different ways that you could work? Do you need to be there 5 days a week? Are there roles that you could take on in a support capacity in a school that might build your confidence and skill and attribute before you take on your own class? So we've certainly got an idea, if you like, of the remit or the things that we would like to focus on. I think it just is such an interesting discussion to have.
And I would just say to any mature age teacher thinking of going back who thinks the world's moved on and may not be up with the latest jargon that teenagers in particular are using. I live in a house with 2 teenage daughters. I can't keep up with it. It's just a part of life these days, I think, that dynamic splintering of the way English is used.
I think that's true. I also think that whilst you might think that's a barrier, maybe look at your assets. So what life experience have you had away from teaching? And what are you going to be able to bring back into the classroom? We've seen some amazing examples of people who have chosen to go and pursue other careers or have other life experience. And what we know is their classrooms are richer for it because they can bring a range of perspectives, different understanding and reflection on the world. And they are better teachers for that.
You are dead right. I'm just thinking back some of my teachers who had other careers, and those are the teachers that the curiosity of a student is piqued, and you just want to pick at that and get some stories, which a good teacher will always wend their way back to, so it's part of the ongoing curriculum journey. But that's a really fascinating point. In life, I mean, all of us prefer to be with people who've had a bit of variety in their life. It's the spice.
Well, I also think too, if you think about modern, young people, often it's, well, how's this practical? How's it relevant? Where would I ever use it? That's what they're looking for. And to have, for example, a science teacher who's been away for a period and worked as a technician in a laboratory or a researcher in a university, they can very quickly say, well, in my experience, this is how it rolled out in real life, or this is what I was able to do with it. And so it makes the theory tangible. And I think for a lot of learners, that's what they want.
Now, teacher wellbeing is obviously something of central importance to teachers and to retaining teachers too. What do we know about the state of wellbeing in Australia with our teachers, and what do you think we can do to better support their wellbeing? Future teachers, future leaders in the education sector.
So through the Australian Teacher Workforce Dataset, we do collect information on wellbeing, and we can see there that there is a need to better support teachers and school leaders' wellbeing. I think the environment for many teachers at times becomes more complex. We know that just things that are going on in society, with families, with individual learners, the pressures sometimes on teachers to be attending to all aspects of a child or young person's life can sometimes lead to a bit of overwhelm. So we are hearing, for example, that there are concerns from teachers and school leaders around things such as workload, which we hear a lot of, but also violence and aggression on site. And I often think in other workplaces that just would not be acceptable. So much has happened in this space since we've been collecting this data set. States and territories are responsible by and large for the well-being and safety of teachers and school leaders. And we've seen a whole lot of stuff roll out over the past couple of years to ensure that teachers and school leaders are safer and also well. But nationally, it's been agreed that more needs to happen. And through the Better and Fairer Schools Agreement, for example, wellbeing and workforce is a core initiative that nationally is a focus to be addressed. And also too, through things such as National Teacher Workforce Action Plan needing to do more. So I think there are a couple of real focus areas. One is, how do we ensure the workload is manageable? How do we ensure that we're not making decisions that load more onto teachers and school leaders? How can we better use technology to be doing some more of those administrative tasks? Or actually, how do we leverage the special experience and knowledge of other professions, for example, allied health professionals, to be supporting young people to learn? So there is no one-size-fits-all here. I think really it's a multi-pronged approach to attend to some of those things that we can see.
Still juggling forms the old-fashioned way? Say hello to Student Forms by Xuno. You can create, collect and manage all your student forms online in one simple, secure platform. Save time, stay organised and quick access everything you need, anytime. Visit xuno.com.au and see how Student Forms by Xuno can work for your school.
I'm trying to recall who it was within the neuroscience world that talked about if you are drowning, your brain has no capacity to think of poetry or music. It's focused on survival. So it would follow from that teachers who have a healthy well-being are going to have a greater presence in the classroom. So it's an individual win for them, but it's also a win for all the students.
Well, we would say it's a precondition to supporting learners to learn. So you cannot attend to the safety, well-being and learning of children and young people if you're not feeling well yourself. You just can't, because that's going to be your brain's natural place that it wants to go. So it is a really important precondition, I think, to high-performing classrooms, and something that really needs to be given focus, as it has been actually, and will continue to be a focus area nationally.
Let's dig into this rich data set just a little bit more. Is there an example you could share of how data from the survey has been used to shape thinking or decisions in education already?
Such a good question, and absolutely there are some really great examples. I've just talked about workload. So yes, that was something that anecdotally had been talked about a lot. What the data showed was that it was a significant barrier actually to teachers flourishing. And as a result of that, just as one example, it was agreed to have a workload reduction fund. So a fund that funded initiatives that looked at how to maximise the teacher's time on learning and then to learn from that fund. So funding a number of initiatives nationally and then looking at how well they performed in terms of lowering workload. So I think that's a really important one. I've already talked about wellbeing. I think having that wellbeing data set focused states and territories on what more they could be doing. And so if you go around the nation nationally now, you will see teacher and school leader workforce wellbeing action plans, and that is as a direct result of that data. But also what we have seen is that data around career pathways, so the need for different levels of support or differentiated support at different parts of the career. And that's actually informs things such as aitsl putting together induction guidelines, mentoring guidelines. How do we better support early career teachers in their first 5 years? All of those things are as a tangible result of the information that teachers and school leaders have given us through the survey.
At the beginning of that answer, you talked about workload. I think my mind went to AI, because AI is now entering classrooms, staff rooms as well. there is plenty of potential, and I always go on, there's plenty of risk too with AI. Are you seeing any area in which AI could be used to reduce teacher workload or support retention, perhaps as a result of that?
Yeah, look, AI is a very live discussion at the moment, and to frame it up, we know that there is a strong appetite from Australian teachers particularly to use AI for workload reduction. And in fact, TALIS 2024, that's an international report that's put out around teaching and leadership around the world, showed that I think it was 66% of Australian lower secondary teachers use AI, and that's in contrast to around 40% internationally. So we're ahead of the curve in our uptake of technology. But when we talk to teachers, we hear that there is a number of concerns or things that they really want in place. So ethical guardrails, how do I know that I'm using this in the best way for my learners? Hands-on examples of where it's appropriate to use or not use it, and also system-level guidance. So there's this absolute understanding of its benefit, but I think not surprisingly for a profession that takes its role very seriously, a need for some guidance and some structure around how it can be used. From aitsl.edu.au's perspective, and you heard me talk earlier around teaching being a human endeavour, we've got to be cautious that we're not offboarding those things that have the most impact on learners. So connection, trust, building a relationship with learners, understanding learners in depth. They're all things that are the role of the teacher. But certainly you couldn't argue that there's some administrative tasks, the downloading of data, a level of insight and analysis coming through that's going to make you, help you make a better decision about the next stage in a learner's journey. They're all open, I think, for discussion and debate. So we're really open to exploring how technology can support teachers and improve education outcomes. And we really want to do that through conducting research, but also working toward those reasonable and responsible frameworks that we know teachers want to feel comfortable with its use.
I started this by referencing World Teachers' Day. Falls on October 31st this year, 2025, at the time this is being published. You've said before that recognition should not be confined to a single day. Why is it important that we find meaningful ways to celebrate teachers year-round?
It is really important for a very simple reason, and that is that a very high proportion of the community trust and respect teachers. We can see that in the market research. It's about 8 or 9 out of 10 people. When asked about teaching, will say, yes, they trust teachers, they believe teachers do an amazing job. When we go and ask teachers themselves, though, they're not feeling that. So in their perception of what the community thinks of them is less than what we know the community thinks of them. And so it's really important in our lives and our world that we're making that space to show our gratitude and appreciation for teachers and the profession. And our World Teachers' Day is a great celebration of that. But I would be asking people to be thinking, where else can you be doing that? You know, what other opportunities through the course of a year can you be taking time to show your gratitude and appreciation? Because really what we want to do at aitsl is create a culture where teachers are and know that they are respected and trusted and valued by the Australian community.
It just occurred to me that given it's October 31st, that's also Halloween. Do you think it would be warming of a teacher's heart that kids dressed up as teachers as they went around the suburbs on Halloween?
As long as they weren't scary teachers. I mean, you know, there are. We did a fun thing last year where we actually pulled out popular culture teachers, and you could see there that quite a lot of them were more scary than others. So, look, I think pick your teacher carefully and maybe look at how you portray them to their best.
Yeah, more treat than trick.
That's right.
Just finally, Tim, looking ahead, education, it's often described as everyone's business. If you look 5 years ahead, What gives you hope about the teaching profession here in Australia?
What I see in the teaching profession now is such a commitment to using the best available evidence and information to improve the outcomes of learners. So I would hope in 5 years that we've seen some of that commitment that the profession is displaying come to fruition and see an absolute lift in education outcomes. But in terms then of that ownership, I think it's really important that everyone asks themselves, where's my part in supporting Australia's children and young people to learn? Some of what we see is expecting schools, teachers, school leaders to do more. And my question is actually what more can be done by others to support those learners to get to and engaged in learning so that teachers can really concentrate their energy and effort on what they're trained in doing, which is assisting all children and young people to learn and grow.
On that note, Tim Bullard, thank you very much for joining me around the school table.
Thank you so much, Steve.